Bradshaw Ranch has some of the most powerful or strongest vortex energy hotspots on it that I have seen just about anywhere in the Sedona area. My name's Benjamin Lonetree, and I am a retired electrical engineer with a second degree in electronic circuitry design. So we have been here to Bradshaw Ranch several times, more than several times, and there is definitely some very incredible anomalous activity here. And the activity, I feel, has an electrical nature to it. It also has a magnetic nature to it. A lot of the equipment that I use for validating what's going on out here and detecting magnetism or detecting electrical fields or detecting very low frequencies electromagnetic signals, I built the equipment myself. So my entire work career spanned 49 and a half years before I retired. And my point in saying that is, professionally, I have been working with these type of energies and the proper equipment to validate them for almost half a century. So that's what we're going to be looking for. We're going to be looking for electrical activity, magnetic activity. Maybe we'll get some plasma activity, and that'll help us postulate and fit it into the formula to explain why people experience what they do here. But I think the biggest thing we're going to look for, and we have the equipment to do it now, is interdimensional portals. They exist here. I have absolutely no doubt, but I do not want to go on film telling people there's portals here. I want to prove it. Right here you have the stones for like the patio or the porch, but if you stand right in this area, I feel it instantly. But if I were to stay here longer than about a minute, I'd fall over. When I first discovered this was a couple of months ago. We were out here. I walked out of the house and I came to this spot, and I actually fell to the ground, had to catch myself with my hands, and came out here, stood here. He hit the ground, he fell.
The same spot?
Same spot. And there was another lady here from Colorado. She looked at us and she said, I stood there before, I can't stand there, I get dizzy. And as I stand here now talking to you, I can feel it. Now we're going to measure this later, but this is what happens when you're on a Sedona vortex. Right here is, in my opinion, magnetic energy spiraling, emitting through and out of the ground. And that's why you get dizzy here. This is my new portable magnetometer, and we are going to try it over a magnetic hotspot, or what I suspect is a magnetic hotspot at the ranch. So we're going to turn it on, and we're going to see what we get. I'm about 3 feet from the hotspot. And the meter's going nuts right over the top, so it's hot here. It has a magnetic component to it. I'm going to bring this down close to the ground and just let it sit. Now it's stabilized out of the wind. I'm going to increase sensitivity. And you can see it's moving on the meter. So what I suspect is happening here, if you can get the meter on the camera, you'll see it's moving back and forth. What I suspect this is, just like they exist in Sedona, this is a magnetic vortex. In other words, magnetic energy is emitting from the ground, and it's spinning like a tornado emitting up into the air. And you can see that's what it's doing because the meter's moving. It's not staying stationary in one spot.
Ben has just told us a super hotspot exists right here in this spot. And let's test it out with the dowsing rods. Okay. And as I reach the hotspot, I get a full reaction. So if it wasn't hitting my shoulders, it would spin all the way around. And as I exit, They're gonna go back into search position pretty quickly. So let's just try and hit this hot spot from another angle after my hair chills out. Okay. And once again, full reaction. Interesting, they went inwards this time. They went outwards on the way in. So when I approach from this direction here, they're going inwards, again, right in the focal point of the hot spot. Oh.
All the way.
Right as you passed.
Oh. And? Well, my whole wrist started shaking.
Ask him to go back into search. There you go. And then now approach it from the other direction. I'm on 1%, let's go. Full reaction, okay, stop. You're exactly there. And we're getting...
Now they're split. They're like 180 degrees apart.
I mean, that is a reaction, and we've all been getting them, so science. This is a photo taken by Hoodoo in 2020 of an entity that looks a lot like a Bigfoot. This being is located only several feet away from the hotspot on the ranch house patio, moving away from it. Could it be emerging from a portal which has just opened?
Okay, just outside of the Bradshaw Ranch house. If you go out on the porch and go off to the right, there is one spot, one location. People get dizzy and almost fall on the ground. It happened to me. It happened to Hoodoo Tall. And a while back, there was a lady down from Colorado. She hit the spot and she went down to the ground. I mean, you just get dizzy and before you know it, you're on your way to the ground. You got to put your hand out and catch yourself. We recorded at that location. I have never seen this at the vortices, at the vortex sites in Sedona. This is new. I've never seen it. Here, the top half of the chart is magnetic activity, and the bottom half of the chart is ionospheric activity. And they're both going nuts. I have ionospheric activity going off the chart, going crazy. At the same time, I have magnetic energy going crazy. To me, looking at the data and what was recorded, I'm going to speculate at this location, a portal was getting ready to form or open up.
Here is a sped-up overview of the magnetic and electrical readings from the ranch house patio hotspot, which Ben detected using his specialized magnetic and ionospheric measuring equipment. They are the most dramatic readings he has ever recorded or seen, besides the readings from one single other location, the windmill. So what did you find out here?
I want to set, I'll show you. Are you filming?
Yeah.
All right. What's going on here, and I'll show you. Here's the well casing to the well. There's been a lot of films on the ranch and documentaries. People will be here with no wind, and all of a sudden the windmill starts turning. I speculate the reason why that happens is you get a magnetic surge out of the ground. The top of the windmill is like a pinwheel, and when the pinwheel you had as a kid, and you blow on the pinwheel and the pinwheel would spin. What happens here is because the well is rooted deep down into the ground, it makes a path for probably electrical energy to come up from the well casing up to the top, and because you have electricity flowing, current is produced. Current creates a magnetic field, and just like the wind spins a pinwheel, the magnetic energy makes the metal fan up on top of the windmill turn. So it's like a magnetic wind making the windmill spin. And I just used my electronic dowsing rods with the magnetic probe attached, and I have some real interesting magnetic readings here, which I will show you now. if I put the sensing coil perpendicular to the well casing, we'll take a look at the meter and see what the meter does. Now, as you can see, the meter is moving, it's fluctuating. So that tells me magnetic energy is present. But now let's move the meter directly pointed with the sensor pointed at the casing, and we'll see that the intensity increases even more. So this validates, it's increased because you can see there's more meter movement.
So the metals and the metal casing and stuff, that's not influencing your readings? Or
No, the metal's not influencing at all. The metal casing is acting as a piece of wire, so the electrical energy, whatever's beneath us in the ground, can flow through that wire up through the windmill tower itself and discharge. The electrical energy can discharge through the fan blades on top of the windmill.
Ben, this was a well to pump water from, right?
Yes.
Okay, so have you heard about aquifers or underground water causing a lot of electrical activity?
They're conduits. They're electrical conduits.
So if there's water down below here that used to pump up through here, it would make sense that the electricity building up in those aquifers below are still releasing electrons up through that casing.
Absolutely.
And that's what you are recording here.
That's what I'm seeing with the meter bouncing around.
So that underground water is definitely enhancing the electrical environment.
Yes. It's a conduit for energy up here to flow through. It's like a piece of wire. It's conductive. And especially with the water up here in this area, it's so full of minerals. The more minerals you have, the more conductive the water becomes. The windmill would turn with no wind present, and people were filming it. I call it a magnetic wind. The pinwheel on top of the windmill itself is made out of metal. It's magnetic. Magnetism is going to affect it and make it spin.
And this electromagnetic focal point we have here, it would be interacting with people's electromagnetic consciousness, right? So when they gather around here and the windmill decides to start spinning with no air, with no wind, it would be the forces here that are connecting with the consciousness of the people around it. Correct?
Oh yes, absolutely. Our brains work on a magnetic principle. What we just finished recording here was phenomenal, unbelievable. The magnetic activity was all over the place. It would surge, intensify, and right after it intensified, we had a huge positive ion discharge. So what we accomplished up here is proving we have magnetic activity coming up out of the ground through the windmill, like I had speculated, and when it became intensified enough, it produced positive ions. So we have all of the necessary ingredients or components here verified now. Once you have positive ion discharge, that creates the environment for plasma. So in other words, we recorded what was needed to open a portal for plasma crafts or plasma beings, orbs, to come through that portal and interact with us three-dimensional beings here. I have no doubt in my mind. I have theorized this, and we just proved it. Now, another thing happened here, too. The computer shut off by itself. It can't do that. It's programmed to stay running until I turn it off. And when I turned it back on when we came up here, we set it up and walked away for an hour. Then I came back, the computer was turned off. When I turned the computer back on, it said Windows resuming, which tells me something or some entity turned it off, just like what happened up here the last time we did this. Bradshaw Ranch is an incredible place, and we have more scientific, conclusive data now to show why people experience some pretty interesting stuff up here. Now, the last time we were here with a film crew out of Colorado, and they brought down a Connect SLS camera system. And what the SLS does, if they see a human, it's infrared. If it sees a human, it displays the human as a green stick person. Now, when that crew came here, I had my computer set up in the house. And every time I tried hitting record in the program for monitoring magnetic activity, the cursor would jump. And I would move the mouse over. I would use the mouse to move the cursor over to hit record. The cursor would move, so I couldn't. And at that time, one of the guys on the Colorado crew with the SLS camera said, "You have an entity right on top of you, right by you." So I tricked and moved my hand real quick, hit record, and I stepped away from the recorder because it was already recording magnetic activity. And I went back by the guy with the SLS camera, and I could see the entity by my computer reaching for it. It was a green stick person. Now, the important thing is the people from Colorado brought along a mini Tesla coil, and that was sitting about 10 feet away throwing out a Tesla spark on the top. The entity would reach, looking at through the SLS camera, the entity would reach, touch the Tesla coil, the spark, and then touch my computer. Then reach back, touch the Tesla coil, reach back and touch my computer. So I hypothesize it was taking energy from the Tesla coil to manifest in our dimension to the point where it had enough energy to shut my computer down. That is exactly what happened last time, and that is what just happened up here, but we weren't here to see if anything was physically here to turn it off. But same thing happened here as happened last time inside the house. This next chart we're going to review was recorded at the windmill at Bradshaw Ranch. This is so oddball. Again, the top half of the chart is magnetic activity at the windmill being recorded with my magnetometer. The bottom half of the chart is ionospheric activity being recorded with a different sensor. The software is recording what's happening magnetically and ionospherically both at the same time. It's simultaneous, and the activity there is insane. This is nothing but bizarre. Magnetically, here's a magnetic pulse. Here's an outflowing magnetic pulse from the ground, but then it takes a dip, inflows, then it surges magnetically outflowing. Here's one pulse strictly outflowing, and at the same time, look at the ionospheric activity. Here you have a little long duration pulse, 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 bam! Pulse, 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 and then a whole bunch of rapid fire ionospheric pulse activity. It's just bizarre. Here we have lower frequency ionospheric activity, longer duration between the pulses, and magnetically it's just going nuts. I've never seen this. So I'm not sure what I'm describing. And the ionization, I'm going to call these pulses. Here they're very close together, and here they become further apart. I have no explanation for this yet, other than to say the Bradshaw Ranch is a very odd place. And here you can see a good indicator again. The pulses become rapid, they intensify, then they remain intense, but they become further apart. Here's one, here's one, here's one. Then they almost turn into solid ionization. Two more pulses, and then here we have the electrical discharge. And again, I suspect it's into the aquifer. And once we have that electrical discharge, we create magnetism because current is flowing. So you can see the ionization build up, it culminates in a big electrical discharge, and that creates current, which creates a magnetic field, and that's why we can detect it. Right after the electrical discharge, we show an increase in magnetic activity. And again, this was recorded at the windmill at the Bradshaw Ranch. It's just a very strange place. In this portion of the video, I wanted to show you what a baseline looks like. This is the magnetic and the electric ionization equipment set up at my house, a non-vortex location. There's the magnetometer, and there is the electric field sensor. Now, in the recording chart, you can see magnetic on the top and electric on the bottom. Very little going on. Now, I'm going to scroll it forward so you can have a look at the difference between being in a non-vortex location like my house versus being in Sedona, where magnetic is very, very high, magnetic activity. Now, in the bottom chart, electric, that is a lightning discharge somewhere up in the atmosphere. So let's continue forward. And as you can see, there's not a lot going on. Baseline. In a non-magnetic vortex location, everything's pretty quiet. Magnetic activity is very minimal, and electric activity is very minimal. Ionization activity is very minimal. Now, coming up here, I took a little screwdriver, walked out to the equipment so you could see that it's functional, it's working, even though the chart shows very little right now. So stand by, we're going fast forward, and we'll come up to that point. Okay, we continue on, nothing going on, very quiet magnetically and electrically, ionization-wise. Now here, on the bottom in the electric, those little blips are me walking along the driveway. That's electricity discharging off my body. In the top in magnetic, that's me waving a little tiny screwdriver about 2 feet away from the magnetometer just to show you everything's working. And there's a little magnetic screwdriver I was waving in front of the magnetic magnetometer. Now here's at the Bradshaw Ranch. Look at the magnetic activity on top versus electric activity on the bottom. And I'm going to scroll this a little forward so you can see. Sedona and that area and the Bradshaw Ranch is very high in magnetic, electric, and ionization activity. It's really quite phenomenal. And there you go. You can see the difference between baseline and vortex areas.
Here, let's take a look at the tail end of Ben's data at the windmill location. Ben has never seen any readings this dramatic in amplitude before in his decades of measuring vortex energy. He has also never seen any energy pulses this strangely organized. Notice that we are now seeing what appears to be almost mathematically precise surges of electrical discharge, equally distanced apart from one another at times, as if these surges are of intelligent design. Could this be some kind of code or communication created by a higher intelligence?